Lil Mabu went from being one of the hottest self-made drill artists topping the charts to losing credibility and momentum due to the poor decisions he made to stay relevant. And so in this video, we'll be looking at his journey, how he ruined his career, and where he is now. Rise of Lil Mabu. Lil Mabu, born Matthew Peter DeLuca on April 4, 2005, came out of Manhattan's Upper East Side, where he grew up in a wealthy household and attended the elite collegiate school. But instead of following a traditional path like you'd expect for a rich kid, he started experimenting with music around 2018, slowly building momentum online. In 2020, he began getting real attention with a melodic track called Miss Me, which pulled in hundreds of thousands of views and introduced him to a younger audience. However, things really shifted in 2021 when he leaned into New York drill, dropping tracks like Demon Time and Move It. This is where his image started to spark conversations, because now you had a kid from a privileged background stepping into a genre built in a completely different reality, and people loving his art regardless. I can only tell you that your marketing is the best I've seen in my whole life. I'm surprised how you know how to make yourself known. Congratulations to the one who controls your social networks. I'm not gonna cap. The hook is definitely one of a kind. You're on your way to the top. This foreshadowed his way to the top because by 2022, his career picked up fast with the mixtape Double M's, where he worked alongside names like Diddy Osama, Dusty Locane, and Shaike. Then came Throw with Diddy Osama, which blew up instantly, hitting 42 million views on YouTube, pushing him deeper into the spotlight. His first major charting song came on May 4, 2023, and he released Mathematical Disrespect. The track he self-produced that went viral on TikTok and even landed him on the Billboard Hot 100 at number 47. He followed that up with Mr. Take Your Bitch featuring Krishan Rock and even collaborated with Fivio Foreign, a move that gave him a level of industry validation and a massive online presence, pulling in millions of followers, all while studying at Emory University and recording music straight from his dorm. But even as his numbers kept growing and his career seemed to get bigger, things took a dark turn on February 23, 2023. Trip to the Hood Backlash. And he dropped Trip to the Hood, a track that completely shifted how people saw him when he said the following. Trip to the hood so I can make it out. Just so y'all can say I got shit handed down. On the surface, it looked like another drill release, but the real issue was what Lil Mabu was actually saying in the song, because in Trip to the Hood, he raps lines like, I took a trip to the hood so I could make it out, which immediately raised eyebrows, because Lil Mabu grew up on Manhattan's Upper East Side and attended private school, far removed from that street life. Now that's where the backlash really came from, because people were reacting to what sounded like a completely made-up struggle, borrowing a story that didn't belong to him, using a narrative tied to real hardships just to add depth to his music. And in a genre like drill, where authenticity matters a lot, that kind of disconnect didn't sit right, because it came off as playing a role for clout, and once that perception took hold, the internet ran with it. I'ma say it like this: Lil Mabu co-opts hood culture while simultaneously making a mockery and glorifying the violence and poverty that afflicts our communities, exploits our suffering for profit and clout. He's mad goofy for that shit, straight up clown. He raps about killing ops and spinning blocks and then goes back to his mansion unharmed. Lil Mabu, on the other hand, actively is trying to create a fake persona or image of a drill artist or gangster. I don't listen to his music actively, but from what I've seen online, he's making profit from the fake persona, which is mocking, copying, and recycling rappers in the hip-hop scene. Is the definition of a meme rapper. Now, to be fair, not everyone was against him, because some people defended Lil Mabu by saying the whole thing was intentional, but he was playing a character and leaning into satire. You're actually dumb if you think the video was him laughing at the hood. He was making a marketing reference to the cartoon Thugaboo. The song is a parody of that. But even then, that defense didn't fully land for most audiences, because the tone didn't clearly signal that it was satire, and without that clarity, people took it at face value. And that's where things really started to shift for him, because instead of being seen as a creative artist experimenting with a genre, he was now viewed as a privileged outsider stepping into a space for attention, using rage bait content to stay relevant. This changed how people interpreted everything he did after that. Teach Me How to Drill and N-word controversy. But as if Lil Mabu couldn't make the situation worse for himself, in December 21, 2023, he dropped Teach Me How to Drill with Fivio Foreign, a hit that pushed the conversation into even more sensitive territory. On paper, that looked like a solid move, because Fivio is a respected name in New York drill, so the collaboration gave Mabu even more industry visibility. And although the song did amass over 47 million views on YouTube, it didn't take long before people started focusing on a specific part of the song, because right after one of Lil Mabu's lines, Fivio comes in with an ad-lib that includes the N-word, and actually sings that he can't say the word, I'ma say it for him. Yo, Favi, passing the trigger. White boy, what you my nigga? Yo, Mabu, lift him. You can't say the word, I'ma say it for him. Now that moment might seem small at first, but it quickly became the center of the entire discussion, because listeners started asking a bigger question. Was Lil Mabu indirectly benefiting from language he couldn't use himself? And once that question hit social media, everything escalated, because looking at the setup, the timing, and how the track was structured, many people felt like it blurred a line, because from their perspective, it looked like Mabu was using a black collaborator to say something he couldn't say, while still being part of the moment and gaining attention from it. So the criticism shifted from just one lyric into a conversation about race, authenticity, and how far someone can go when they're stepping into a culture that isn't rooted on their own background. And in a genre like drill, where identity and lived experience carry a lot of weight, that kind of perception matters. Or as one Reddit user put it, this kid thinks shit funny too when he tries to make like stereotypical white boy jokes like he's cutting his own ass. That's how guys like him get you. I don't care if you're trying to make it seem like you're smart but still a gangster. I don't care about none of that. You a fucking lame. Fuck that kid, man. Simple as that. Another went as far as to say, Lil Mabu got daddy's money so he can say whatever the F he wants. Can't wait till someone cracks that MF's head on the pavement. In response, Lil Mabu acknowledged outlets reporting this controversial moment and asked fans to defend him. Or as he put it, someone please defend me, as he commented under one of these posts. From his point of view, the song was playing into the conversation on purpose, almost like he was acknowledging the criticism while still pushing forward with the music. But the problem is that it just felt like another example of pushing boundaries for attention. Unfortunately for Lil Mabu, that combination started to take a toll on how seriously he was being taken as an artist, painting him as someone who relied heavily on controversy to stay relevant, even when it meant stepping into topics that were already sensitive. But his reputation was about to take another hit because staged gunshot and legal fallout. On April 13, 2024, during the filming of a music video, a gun suddenly discharged on set. Naturally, people reacted fast, and at first, it appeared as a real, dangerous moment. However, there were speculations that the entire situation had been staged, and that's when things really turned, because once people believed it wasn't real, the reaction actually got worse, since now it looked like the whole thing had been done on purpose for attention. So instead of being seen as someone caught in a risky situation, Lil Mabu was now being criticized for creating one, and doing it in a way that was totally unnecessary. And that's what makes the backlash heavier, with people leaving comments like, everything that guy does is bait. Usually seeing his face is my biggest indicator to keep scrolling, and I'm really curious how often this happens. There's so many prop guns being used in these amateur rap videos. Yet people's criticism was the least of Lil Mabu's problems because questions were raised about whether the situation could fall under reckless endangerment, given that safety protocols weren't properly followed during filming. But given that the stunt was believed to be staged, there was technically no violation of safety protocols or firearm laws, and for that reason, there was no legal action taken against Lil Mabu. At this point, it was clear that Lil Mabu was trying to manufacture street credibility instead of building it naturally. And on top of that, there was a concern about the influence his actions could have, because a large part of his audience is made up of younger people. Unfortunately, this incident became a major turning point because he was now being seen as reckless, someone willing to push things too far just to stay relevant. But things wouldn't get any better for Lil Mabu because Bang Bang and XXL freshman feud. On June 26, 2024, he released the single Bang Bang, a direct diss track aimed at XXL for excluding him from the 2024 XXL freshman class.
Fuck XXL, I'm a freshman in real life.
Now for a lot of artists, that kind of snub can sting, because the XXL list has long been seen as a stamp of recognition for rising talent. Even though people often debate how accurate or fair it really is, he made things even worse by taking shots at the artists who made the list, mocking their selection and claiming he would have opened fire on them if he found them all in one classroom. And on paper, that kind of response might sound bold, because calling out the system can sometimes win support, especially if fans already feel the list is flawed. But in this case, the reaction was different because a lot of listeners saw it as more frustration, the kind that exposes insecurity. Instead of elevating his image, the track came across like he was trying too hard to prove something that people weren't fully convinced of in the first place. So rather than spark excitement, it started raising eyebrows as critics pointed out that for someone with his level of exposure, industry connections, and online following, complaining about not making the list felt out of touch. Mabu is corny AF, and yeah, he's the definition of hip-hop gentrification. Others felt that the list was fair because to them, Lil Mabu doesn't deserve to be on that list. Although the song gained over 17 million views on YouTube, it didn't gain the traction other hits had gotten, considering that it was a diss meant to fuel their beef. It didn't dominate charts, it didn't spark a major back and forth, it didn't shift public opinion in his favor. Instead, it kind of faded quickly, and that silence said a lot. At the same time, the tone of the song didn't help his case, because while he was claiming superiority, the delivery didn't fully back it up in the eyes of many listeners because of poor vocal performance and corny lyrics. Or as one reviewer put it, I think this is a very inorganic attempt to be a white version of Chief Keef. His voice sounds like shit, and I don't like the lyrics. Most of them are corny, especially the shooting up XXL line. He needs to learn to stop crying, to be honest. So the message and the reception didn't match, and that gap made the whole situation feel off. Unfortunately for Lil Mabu, this moment ended up doing more damage than good because instead of pulling people toward him, it pushed them away, including fans who had already been on the fence. I did, and honestly I think he's so corny. The lyrics get so corny sometimes to the point that he sounds like satire, and he constantly sounds like he's shitting his pants or has a gun to his head. Lil Mabu's straight ass. His verses don't rhyme, bro. Doesn't make sense in his own songs. Plus he's just a wannabe street rapper. Bro thinks his drill music is good. It isn't whatsoever. Drill rap is ass category in general. And from an industry perspective, it didn't build new bridges either, because calling out peers and institutions without a strong payoff can isolate an artist more than it elevates them. So by the time things settled, Dang Bang was remembered as a misstep rather than the bold statement it was meant to be. But the biggest hit in Lil Mabu's career came on March 28, 2025, when he decided to show how he'd gotten his hands dirty. Bonnie Blue relationship and final collapse. With OnlyFans personality Bonnie Blue even releasing a single named after her, now celebrity relationships always get attention, but this one felt different, because instead of staying in the background, it played out in the public, in a very intentional way across social media. However, the moment that really pushed everything over the edge happened during an NBA game in Miami. The clip started circulating online, showing Bonnie appearing to give Lil Mabu head courtside, right there in a public setting with cameras everywhere and families in the arena. Once that footage spread, it sparked an immediate reaction from his fans who left comments like Sloppy Toppy 3000. But despite widespread outrage, no formal disciplinary action was taken against Lil Mabu or Bonnie Blue by the NBA, Miami Heat, or law enforcement. Nevertheless, the backlash didn't stop at the incident itself, because a lot of people began to question whether the whole thing had been staged from the start. That idea spread quickly, especially given his track record of controversial stunts, reinforcing the belief that this was another attempt to go viral, no matter the cost. So instead of gaining attention in a positive way, the moment ended up damaging his reputation even further, and some even mocked him for working with her because to them, Bonnie Blue is like a city bus. Dirty, dark, cold, but yet everybody rides her on the daily. And then things got worse when he leaned into that. On social media, I posted a caption that read, "Her holes are for everyone, but her heart is mine." That line alone sparked another wave of criticism, with many calling it just another stunt to get attention and accusing Lil Mabu of having no standards. Bro has zero standards. Not good. You're just promoting this stuff by letting women know someone will still be into them even doing what she does. He's trolling and attention seeking. This guy's known for using drama to be famous. His music career is declining and he's grasping at straws to keep relevant. Now, such a relationship would be expected to translate into streams and attention for the song, given that both Lil Mabu and Bonnie have that online notoriety, but the track didn't perform anywhere near his earlier hits, and the overall reception was average at best. And that's when the shift became undeniable, because before, controversy used to boost his visibility, but now, it wasn't converting into support anymore. Unfortunately, this moment marked what many people see as the final collapse of his mainstream relevance, because by this point, he was no longer being talked about as a rising artist, but as someone chasing shock value just to stay in the conversation. Since that time, to March 2026, things have gone noticeably quiet around him. He still maintains an online presence, posting occasionally and interacting with fans, but the scale is very different from before. He's yet to release another viral hit, and major collaborations aren't happening. Once that kind of shift happens, it's very hard to reverse, because no one is there to support you. Payoff. And this is where everything really falls apart, because when you look at Lil Mabu now compared to where he was just a couple of years ago, the drop is pretty obvious. At his peak, he had momentum on his side. Viral songs, big collaborations, millions of views per stock, stacking up fast, and people constantly talking about him, whether they liked him or not. But now, that noise is gone. The views are lower, the reactions are quieter, and the same controversy that once pushed him forward doesn't hit the same anymore, because people have already seen it. And once that shock factor wears off, there's not much left to fall back on. However, on top of lower numbers, the bigger issue is the fact that some part of his audience stopped believing in him as an artist, because when everything starts to feel like a stunt, people stop taking the music seriously. And in a genre like drill, where image and authenticity matter a lot, that shift is hard to recover from. Now, to be fair, Lil Mabu isn't stuck with no options, because unlike a lot of artists in that space, he didn't come from a place where music was his only way out. He still has his education, his background, the safety net that most people in the scene don't have. But at the same time, that's also part of why the fall hits differently, because the version of Lil Mabu that people once followed, the viral drill artist who was everywhere, doesn't really exist anymore. And unless something major in his music career changes, this might just be the end of that chapter completely.